All right, it's repeat season for the TV industry, so the Republicans were hoping to catch a few extra eyeballs this week since Donald Trump promised the convention would not be boring. But the networks did not make that same promise. Night after night, the Republican National Convention was essentially a stream of talking heads, and not from the convention podium.
That's very controversial for most Republican conventions.
Only on C-SPAN could viewers get a full flavor for what was happening inside the Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland.
We are a nation of explorers.
On cable, pundits and analysts filled more than 50% of the airtime, cutting away only for big speeches from Donald Trump's children and, of course, the candidate himself.
Thank you. Thank you.
While the first night was a ratings bonanza for Fox News, beating out the big three broadcasters, by Tuesday, overall viewership took a nosedive. Even Trump wasn't watching, appearing on the O'Reilly Factor during prime time.
They're essentially calling death to the police, and that's not acceptable.
Then there was that little matter of Melania Trump's speech. A sharp-eared, unemployed reporter noticed similarities to a 2008 Michelle Obama speech.
You work hard for what you want in life, that your word is your bond.
That you work hard for what you want in life, that your word is your bond.
The plagiarism issue dogged the convention for 2 days. As for all the hype and expectations over new media, we asked our own Adam Riley during his Facebook Live hit if he was seeing much evidence of these social media tools.
People may be doing it on the sly, and I might not be noticing.
Ho-hum.
Yeah, well, that app that was much ballyhooed, I didn't try it. I don't know if anybody did out there. Was it any good? It stunk?
Yeah. There was no timely information on it. You could get a virtual guide through the arena. That didn't help me.
No,
I was
you were
back
here,
in Boston.
exactly.
The schedule was basically a PDF of a 6-page printout in 2-point type. You couldn't even read it on your phone.
You know, it's so true that when you're at a convention, you see and hear and you realize so much more than you do when you're sitting at home. Because, I mean, I sort of like some of the punditry, but most of it is just that. You know, they got all these people talking in the background. You don't really have a feel for who they presented other than the children of Donald Trump himself, and Melania, name you know, Michael Pence. You don't really have a sense of it. And I kind of thought maybe he was going to break that mold a little bit. Well, the networks, you know, you had to watch C-SPAN if you were going to see that.
Well, you know, I don't blame the networks for doing what they did. They're spending an hour a night. First of all, news organizations shouldn't be manipulated, dictated to by the party or the campaign into how much you're going to cover. We'll cover what we want to cover in the way we want to cover it, okay?
At the time we want to cover it.
Exactly. And so that's fine. And also many other ways you could have gotten the raw information from the podium online, on your phone, etc. I was back in Boston watching the raw feed over at WBZ. And I must say, though, you got a much different sense of what was going on here. A lot of the undercard speakers were actually kind of interesting in the information they presented. And if you didn't have access to that or watch C-SPAN, you missed it.
Yeah, that's right. I think it was, now, I personally found it interesting later. I didn't watch it at all. I take that back. I watched some of it in real time. But a lot of it, I deliberately waited for the repeat because I just wanted to find out the highlights and hear what people had to say about it and see them interview some of the delegates and whatever. So I think a lot of people knew they could get access to it too. So like me, maybe they were just sitting outside having a cocktail when the live thing was going on because it just didn't draw you. On the other hand, when you have somebody, I'm not a Joni Ernst fan, but my goodness, she's not some small person. She was off, not in prime time. No. That was bizarre. And I have to say, Mike Pence's speech was very good. It's too bad it didn't get much attention at all.
Well, the ratings were down considerably.
From 4 years ago. And then down all week.
And they were down all week, although there's a lot of question right now as to why they're down. It could be that people were watching it on YouTube or on various other platforms. The ratings don't mean that much anymore. Now, I suppose I'm in the demographic that watches these things on TV, so I watched it on TV. I agree. I didn't think it was that interesting. And we saw the hall, like, emptying out early every night. Even during Trump's speech. Of course, his speech was endless, so at some point, I suppose people were going to get up and leave. But, you know, we've been predicting the death of the convention for many, many years. I think we might have taken one more step toward the grave this week because people just didn't seem that interested in it.
Well, one of the problems in Boston is it was up against a very good homestand for the Red Sox.
Yeah.
So what
Yes.
they had to do was flip back and forth at the same time and a couple of very good games. But it's interesting, though, my career covering politics was always on the newspaper side, and we were less interested in what you might see in the hall. And one of the things about conventions that I think now is just completely missed because the television just isn't interested in it. So much goes on before the evening starts.
Yes.
You have candidates or the prospective candidates maybe 4 years down the road or 8 years down the road going from hotel to hotel talking to the different state delegations or the pressure groups and the interest groups. It's a cornucopia of interesting things that for people who are the junkies to do, so that what happens at night, the planned and scripted speeches, are often the least interesting of what you've seen. So unfortunately you can't encapsulate that very easily and pass it on, but it's filtered out totally from what
the
a
problem
TV
is that
viewer
you
sees.
listen to these pundits and all they do is speculating about what's going to happen 4 years from now. You know, they don't even package, to your point, Kelly, some of the things that happened during the day, and even
Right.
you have no snippets, nothing. You have no sense of what you've missed.
No, and by the way, I should say Ted Cruz's big night was very interesting.
Yeah, that was.
But, you know, again, you didn't necessarily have a sense ahead of time that it was
Yes.
going to be that interesting. You're watching, and all of a sudden, it occurs to the crowd that he's not going to endorse Trump, and you start to get the booing and the catcalls and everything. And now it becomes very interesting. But unless you'd already made a commitment to sit there and watch that, which I had, you would have missed that.
Yeah.
But to Dan's point about the death of the slow death of the convention, that's been coming on for a while. Simultaneously with the decline of clout for the political parties themselves.
Yes.
And in the Republicans' case, if Donald Trump wins, you know, that process speeds up. I mean, this is the death rattle for the Republican Party.
Well, let me just say this to what Tom said. This was an opportunity, and we maybe can still see it next week, for social media to really fill in all the interesting stuff that the networks weren't covering or TV wasn't presenting. And as we've discussed, it didn't pick it up, except for some of the you know, like the Melania Trump plagiarism stuff.
Yeah, that was
you know,
that was too good.
yes.
That was interesting.
No, very much.